Why should we train our children to be likable? Well, the goal is not just to be liked, and it's important to understand why we're doing this. So, if our goal is for our children to be liked, so now they are pleasing, improving, and compromising who they are, that's not the goal. The goal is for our children to be likable so that they can actually bring light into the world. What do I mean by that? If your children did not understand that they have the influence in every room they walk into, we rob them of the idea that their contribution matters, right? So let's kind of reverse engineer this. What if you have a child who you have not set the expectations that this is how we act? What if you have a child who you go into a house and they're jumping all over, the furniture, they're making a mess in the house, and you go into a friend's house and they don't say thank you. They're rude, but they don't really know how to be kind. You've not trained them, right? I had this experience in with my children, and one of their friends came home and came in, and they were just all over the place. And he was a really good kid. He just did not really, he didn't know how to act. He didn't know how to, you don't hit people, or you don't jump on furniture, or you don't throw things across the wall and, hit someone. You pay attention, and this was like a 10-year-old boy, and they're not aware of the importance of discipline. So now it's really hard to want them around the house because it became a sort of a safety issue. And I felt like every time we came over, our house is sort of upside down. And obviously with 8 children, it's a bit more challenging for me to make sure that everything is safe and cleaning up. So it's not that I didn't like the boy. It's that the boy wasn't trained enough for me to actually want to, have the boy around me. Now, that behavior then gets reinforced that they don't want me in their house. I'm not likable. It has nothing to do with them not being likable. Rather, we haven't trained them with the necessary discipline, awareness of how they're showing up, the manners, being polite, learning how to actually respect other people's home. That's costing them their self-esteem. Maybe they're creating a narrative and story that I'm just not likable. I'm not a good, people don't like me, and has probably nothing to do with that. It just means that there's certain things that nobody ever showed them how, and they're getting blamed and shamed for it. So the goal is not to raise children that are proving and pleasing and for the soul of being like. The goal is for us to raise children who are hyper aware of how they are showing up in the world, so they can bring light in the world and not actually cause greater damage or havoc in the world. And it reinforces their belief that they're a valuable human being. And that's why we need to help, raise children who understand the importance of discipline, right? Because people want to be around people that are disciplined, children that are disciplined. They're more pleasant to be around. They're likable. And that's the whole point. So how do you teach children to be likable? Well, number one, you have to teach your children to pay attention to how they're making people in the environment feel. Our children are not raised knowing how to be aware of how they're making people feel. They're raised just, with kind of a clean slate, not understanding how to manage their emotion, not thinking about other people. It has to come from us, which means that we have to, number one, give them language on what it looks like to actually pay attention to how they're making other people feel. So what does that look like? It means that you're sitting down with your 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 15, whatever the age is, and you're saying, pay attention to how somebody's feeling with the words that you're using, the tonality that you're using, and your body language. So they're literally learning a mechanism that helps them to pay attention and hold themselves accountable to how they're acting and how they're making people feel. Now, we can't control how people feel, but what we can train our children is to pay attention to how we make people feel. Because when we know how people are feeling, it helps us, to say, well, how could I contribute to the situation? or it helps their ability to be emotionally intelligent on what everybody's needs are, and that way they can serve people and bring value to the world. I mean, it's a way of thinking about what other people are thinking, not so that they can please other people, but so that they can serve people and bring value to the world out there. Paying attention to how we are making people feel is a very important skill set. And here's why. I love my child, and most of us do. We love our children, but not everybody feels loved by our parent, right? It's like, I know my dad loves me, even though he doesn't know how to communicate. And I read that from Meg Meeker's book. Every father loves their daughters, but not every daughter feels loved by their father. And it struck me so profoundly because ultimately people will remember how we make them feel. And it's not just our words. It's not just, what we're due for them, but how we feel around them. So teaching your children to pay attention to how they are making people feel builds an emotion intelligence that gives them an advantage in the future to tweak, add, subtract, develop, gain new skills, because otherwise they're just kind of walking in blindly, right? So if I'm walking in a room and I'm showing up and I realize, ooh, people really is kind of maybe, guarded, I can look back and say, maybe I was too rough, or maybe they're just having a rough day, or maybe I should have not said something that maybe, they weren't ready for. Maybe I should have been more patient. It helps us develop our ability to draw deeper awareness and how we can create deeper connections and think about how we are showing up for people. It's a very important skill set when they grow up to find the right person for them, when they find a job, their relationship with you, because you could go up to your child and say, okay, you might be sorry with your 7% words, but your 38% tonality doesn't feel like you're sorry. There is now a language of accountability of the importance of how we are making people feel, because that's how we are going to be remembered. Secondly, I think that teaching our children to be likable allows them, doors of opportunity to open, and even further, doors of opportunity to open so that they can bring and contribute to the world. What do I mean by that? Your child is likable. They're pleasant to be around. They ask engaging questions. They're polite. They look people in the eye. They're pleasant to be with. All of a sudden, they meet somebody and they're like, I want to invite you to, my business meeting. I think you're perfect. You'd be a great receptionist. Then it opens the doors of, okay, something maybe I've never thought about, a job that I never thought might even develop my desire to maybe work as a business or work in Congress. Now that door possibility is open simply because I was likable, not me myself, but your child is likable, and people are opening doors that maybe they never realized they actually liked about themselves. How many times was in your life where you're like, I never really thought I would like that, but I actually do, only because somebody invited me to? I mean, so many times that's happened for us. And that has everything to do with us being a likable human being, genuinely, no, not fakely. We teach our children to be genuine. And next thing you know, there's a bigger world that opens, and the world is not small and insulated and insular. And they get to see all these different opportunities pop up that they never thought was possible. Number 3, this idea of MMFI. This is how, we train our children. Everybody has a sign in their head, MMFI. I believe I'm going to butcher it. I think that was maybe from Brian Tracy. We didn't make that up. Where everybody has a sign that says, make me feel important. Why? Because everybody wants to feel important. And when your child understands that how to serve people and make them feel important, it's a way to train them, right? To bring value to other people's life, to be an active contribution, to pay attention to other people's needs. It develops that servant heart. And to what end? It fulfills them. It actually fulfills them. Why? Because it's in giving that we feel fulfilled, that we receive that level of fulfillment. And so we train our children not to be self-absorbed, rather to live a life of meaning, contribution, so they're constantly serving. So full circle, right? When our children are likable, what happens is that they enforces the goodness of the people around them, and which allows them to see the world as good, which makes them want to give back to the world, which is something that we are all called to. We're all called to give back to the world. And you know that because it fulfills your heart when you're giving back. So the idea of raising likable children is not just to raise children for the sake of being liked, but for the sake of being a light in the world. And that's your goal. That's our goal, because ultimately being a light in the world serves their heart. It fulfills them to do something meaningful that allows them to fulfill their call to bring a light in this world, because we are all called to be a light, including your children. What we want to do is to train them as a vessel to be bearers of light. And the way we do that is that if we give them all those tools of self-awareness, of understanding how, they make people feel, of understanding how they can make people feel valued, and it develops their ability to be a magnet, I would say, a light to people, that then becomes an opportunity for them to be a walking active contribution to the world. And that's what we need more of. And it begins in our homes. It begins with us parents as mothers being hyper vigilant on the importance of the layers of impact and how we are training, or perhaps not training, our children. It's so beautiful when we can see the layers of impact and see, wow, by this one gesture of teaching my children to greet actually can, have years and decades of impact, and how they are going to actually see the world. And that's our role, is to connect the dots for them and help them see the ripple impact of their humanity.